on. All right, folks, welcome to the channel. My name is Dave, and I've got a good friend, special guest today, brilliant legal mind, somebody who kind of, takes some very strong positions. She's been on the show before. Please welcome Stacie Haneline.
Thank you. Hi, Dave. Thank you so much for having me.
Hey.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction.
Yeah, I've been working on that. For the new year. It's the first time in the new year that you and I have done video. It's been a while. A lot has happened. A lot is happening today as we speak. In fact, if we do this video and it goes too long, we're going to miss the whole inauguration. Is that going to upset you at all?
Oh my goodness. We'll miss it?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't care.
I don't care. I waved goodbye to Donald Trump. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about at the beginning here is the end of Trump. I think he went out with a whimper with all the threats and all the different things and the January 6th occurrences, which I think were very mischaracterized in the media. I know what an insurrection is. I've read the Webster's version of it, and it has nothing to do with what occurred on the 6th, but I know you have some insight into that. You're going to tell me about something that happened. There was she was a Marine, right, who got shot in that whole altercation?
I don't know if she was a Marine, but her name was Ashley Babbitt.
Yeah.
And I did see the video of her being shot. Mm-hmm. And there's a guy named, on Twitter, his name is Real Jaden X. Mm-hmm. I can't remember what his actual name is at the moment, but I did see, I read the article from Rolling Stone where Rolling Stone interviewed him, and, I watched the video where he recorded, the police officer. There were people banging on the doors, and she was not one of them. Right. And the police officer took the gun, and Real Jaden X was recording, like, when the gun was being aimed directly at her for like a few seconds, it takes to like aim, and then it fires, and then she goes down, and he just continues recording, which I always think is weird when people stand around and record someone dying.
Yeah.
So my question is, after reading the Rolling Stone article, it was very, very clear to me that this guy who recorded the video was not a Trump supporter at all. Yeah. So what was he doing there in the first place? Right. Everybody thinks that these were all Trump supporters who were causing the problems. Mm-hmm. Well, guess what? Didn't anybody ever think that there could have been non-Trump supporters who were within the peaceful Trump supporters? Did that not occur to anyone? So, yes. So what was he doing there in the first place? He was not a Trump supporter. Mm-hmm. He talked about how, he tried to fit in with them and whatever. And then, and then he records that. But what was he doing there? Yeah. Was he a trespasser just like everyone else? Or did he actually have permission to be there? I don't know. Yeah. I mean, I think that's something that people should think about.
Yeah, well, if you had a curious news media, it seemed almost like the narrative for that was written either as it was happening or before it was happening. And Trump gave a speech, and what he did during that speech, and I'll use my euphemisms here. He was talking about electric frog during the speech, and he gave that speech, and I think he laid out a really good case as to why you might want to investigate or look into these things. Now, I've been following this since Election Day, and I can tell you, I've seen footage of, these crates of ballots being taken out from under a table at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, whatever time it was in the morning when everybody else was told to leave. I've seen windows being covered with like this cardboard so people couldn't see into the polling place to see what was taking place. I know a tractor trailer truck filled with ballots that started, I believe, in New York State and was bound for Pennsylvania. I know a whole tractor trailer full of ballots. They estimate something like anywhere from 72,000 ballots to close to 200,000 ballots went missing.
Just like in Tim Canova's case.
Yeah, right. Very good recall on the Canova problem. And the poor guy is still to this day. So there are many of us out here who maybe weren't as heavily invested in Trump as the fervent Trump supporters are. But keep in mind, this has more to do now with procedure and how things are done than the political candidate. Say you were a Green Party candidate and your candidate did great, but then you thought, had more votes or whatever, but they threw all those ballots in the trash. Okay. You'd be thinking, okay, so why should I go out and vote? I mean, it seems as though, I hate to use the word rigged because that's too gentle now. It's almost as if anything that goes slightly outside the norm, and this is why I worry about third parties in general, if they ever become prominent, they're going to be like the bullseye is going to be huge. I mean, you got Republicans who are being targeted, or populists, or however you want to categorize them. And to me, it just seems as though people don't see what the bigger problem is right now. I put the first two items I wanted to talk about were elections and free speech, because without free elections and free speech,
we have nothing.
We don't do anything. Why bother? Go out, go to the theme park, take your family, do all these things and just hope that the world treats you right. Because at a certain point, if you don't have those two things, you can cheerlead all you want for your favorite political candidate or your political party or your philosophy, but doesn't matter, right?
Right.
So,
right.
What's your take?
Without free speech, we have no democracy, which, by the way, we don't.
Right.
Democracy is not real.
Right.
But we don't, without free speech, we will not be able to debate each other on any of the other issues. So nothing else matters.
Right. And then
without free speech.
And if you cast a vote and you're not sure if that vote will be counted, again, I'm not going to use my euphemism. I'm just going to say, if you don't have confidence that the system you're using, now in your state, in my state, for some reason, they were able to pull off that vote quick, accurately, 11 p.m., midnight, 99% reporting. Funny that President Trump won both of those states. Kind of interesting coincidence, right? Not, again, this isn't necessarily an argument. Trump is just the person, or was the president and the candidate who I think there are a lot of questions that will forever, and this is the problem moving forward with the next administration, there are questions that will forever dog that election. And I don't know, unless somebody from their side says, you know what, let's look into this. But they won't. They won't, because the reason, and the obvious reason is because I think they'll find a lot of things and there will be questions, and then legitimacy, and already the legitimacy of the whole thing moving forward, I think is obviously there's going to be a cloud over this for the entire time. But imagine if you did do a forensic audit, not just, hey, let's count the same ballots again. Let's actually check the signatures, check where they came from. You know how it is. There are a lot of things that in the old days, you had to have an ID and so forth, show up and vote. Nowadays, you just show up and they cross your name off of a list. You could be a dead person, whatever, that they found a name, and you go in there and you vote. And I'm sorry, I know a lot of people are going to say, oh, you're just trying to disenfranchise people. Actually, I'm actually trying to empower people, because if their vote doesn't count and it doesn't matter who gets in there to vote, then the whole thing is a farce.
Right. So I want to add something.
Okay.
The lawsuits, you know how there were numerous lawsuits that were filed on behalf of Trump.
Yep.
And then people said, well, you know, Trump already went through all of the legal avenues and, you know, that's done.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to note that those lawsuits, when they were dismissed, they were not dismissed on substantive grounds. They were dismissed on procedural grounds, meaning
Yes.
that the evidence that the attorneys were ready to put forth never got to be heard in front of the courts.
Correct. That's correct. It's 100% correct. And this is why, when, you know, I've got other friends that do political commentary, and the nuts and bolts of issues to me right now are far less appealing when I hear like somebody arguing about their point of view about a certain topic, and I go, that's cool. And you've got, and you know, it's an interesting take on whatever it is you're talking about. But I get back to, we all should be working on trying to fix the broken system, because if we don't, it's like a car with no engine. It's like a car, you know, hey, I got a shiny new car, doesn't run, but look at it and I'm going, great, you got a little problem, you know. So democracy cannot function if, and that's another, and by the way, you talk about the courts of all people in this election, and Trump, you know, he appointed a bunch of Supreme Court justices, like 3 of them, and they didn't want to hear it. They had 22 states that signed on. I think it was Ken Paxton in the state of Texas, the attorney general there, and 22 other states said, "Yup, here's what I think." Like,
someone got arrested in Texas recently for the frog thing.
The frog thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they did, and yeah, I think it was. See, there are some states that care about the frog thing, and there are some states like Pennsylvania that they said something. There was a guy up there I saw an interview with, and he was like, "Oh, well, you know, it's just, it's inconsequential. The thing that they like to say over and over again is like, we've already debunked that." Or it was the baseless thing was driving me crazy, Stacie. I had to turn off the TV every time. You know, you turn on like what I call, I've given it a new name, the fake stream news. When I hear the fake stream news come on and they say baseless, I go, well, you're not looking. News used to have investigative reporters that would go out and say, we debunked this. But instead, they just read it off a placard that says, "Oh, it's been debunked." Well, by who? Who's debunked it?
Right.
It's like all of the fact checkers that we know are just a joke. I mean, Snopes is like a guy and a girl and a cat, and they're lefties, and they set up a site years ago, and both of them were indicted, and child trafficking, some weird stuff that happened in there. And but there are, you know, people say, "Oh, Snopes, they debunked it." I go, Snopes, come on.
Yeah.
So we're at a point now where we can't go forward unless we fix these problems. And I'm laughing at all this talk on the left about forcing a vote and doing all these procedural things on things that they care about. And I'm thinking to myself, well, if we don't have a democracy, all of this stuff is just, it's like a dog and pony show. I don't know. What do you think?
Oh, I think it's absolutely a dog and pony show.
Yeah.
I think it absolutely is. And I think that, you know, I agree with you that without free speech, there is no democracy.
Mm-hmm.
I was very disheartened when I saw a clip of Tucker Carlson's latest video where he talked about how Mitch McConnell sent word to the White House, to Trump, that if he pardoned Julian Assange, that the Senate would convict him.
Yeah, and because McConnell is the power broker over there, even though he's not technically in the majority. It's actually a tie. It's Kamala Harris that holds the tie-breaking supposed vote, but I think McConnell technically has as much power as Schumer, because you've got guys out there who are, like John Tester, who's kind of more of a blue dog Democrat, and Joe Manchin, the guy from West Virginia, he's kind of a blue dog a little bit. So,
Right.
I mean, they can twist arms. And if that's true about McConnell, then he needs to be run out of Dodge quickly. I mean, I know he just had the Senate is a long term, and he just got reelected, which really stinks.
Right. And I have a ton to say about free speech, but I need a blanket. Do you have a pause button?
Mm-hmm. I don't, but I will talk while you grab your blanket.
Yes, you talk. I'll be right back.
I will talk about some of the things that you and I have already discussed, which, number one, if McConnell is guilty of that, then that's just the kind of political chicanery and manipulation that no matter what party you're in, no matter what philosophy you're in, you just can't imagine that somebody would be that vindictive. But again, I go back to the whole Capitol situation where there was some very bad actors. I'm not going to say all the Trump people were innocent. I think some of them went in along behind these people, like, hey, they got the doors open. And you could see they're like walking within the ropes like they're going on a tour, because I saw the footage. But there appeared to be some people, we'll say, I don't want to say Antifa, but probably Antifa. If you say something like, hey, it's Antifa, or it's a leftward, organization like that, then everything becomes a conspiracy. You just think, okay, it's just these bad actors that cause the problem. But then you got some of these crazy Q people, which I've talked about recently, who I think are almost like a government. I called it like a controlled opposition group, because they're all like, trust the plan. It's going to come out great. Trust the plan. And in religion, that's called, like in Christianity, that's like Calvinism. Like, don't worry, you can't do anything to change your status. God chose you, and now you're on the conveyor belt. All you got to do is go along with the plan. And so that breeds complacency, and it breeds like all of this right to the end. Guess what? There's going to be a martial law, and Trump is the guy who called up all the troops. Trump just boarded Air Force One for Florida. Okay. And my phone is no longer blowing up with Q conspiracies. So what's the plan? When he lands, he's got remote control in Florida. And he's got drones that are going to come in, and they're going to scoop up Harris and Biden. They're going to board a flying saucer, and they're going to fly out. I mean, I don't know. So that's what I call you're back.
Did you get another shipment of vodka?
Yes.
From Vlad?
Yes, right here.
Yes.
It's good stuff. It's he was not happy about the results of the election. I can tell you that. And he blamed me. He blamed me partly because I was not an advocate, because he and Trump, they were pals, as you can see, with all the things that Donald Trump did for Russia while he was president. Just mind-blowing stuff. So we were talking about free speech. I want to mention that I think the events of January 6th, I think, were a really well orchestrated psyop. I let some people call it false flag. They obviously knew that there were going to be. This is the thing, when you telegraph an event, which all the Trump people, and Trump said, yeah, come to Washington. He said something like, it's going to be wild, I remember. And I don't know why he said that, but that's the way Trump always says things. And all of these people locally said, we can infiltrate this. I mean, there are people there, not the Trump people. Trump people didn't want to blow up the Capitol or anything. There were other people, though, I think, that wanted to do it, because I've heard audio, burn this mother bleeper down, and it's like, That kind of doesn't sound like a Trump. Look, Trump supporters are a lot of things. Some of them are a little trigger happy, I think, right now because of a lot of things. And I honestly, personally, I understand. Just like I understand people in the inner cities might be a little trigger happy about something that they're seeing. And I use that phrase. I'm not trying to instigate the people, shoot their guns or whatever. I'm just saying that people are a little on edge. And I don't know what the solution is anymore. I'm really concerned about my first 2 bullet points here, but I'm also concerned that people in general, the way they complied to everything that happened last year without questioning anything. And you and I could probably do a COVID video too, but if I stray into that path, it's going to be a whole can of worms that will open up. But it was, do you think it's kind of weird how everybody just complied and really didn't? I mean, I'm in Florida and we're technically not locked down here, although the East Coast has more problems and more cases and so forth. I mean, you don't have to wear a mask everywhere, but I see people, like 95% of them, wearing a mask everywhere. And I'm talking about outside. I'm talking about in their car. You see things, one person jogging by themselves. How did that happen overnight, Stacie?
I really don't know. I mean, I'll wear a mask if I go into Lowe's or Home Depot or someplace that requires it.
Yeah.
You know, what's really strange to me is that even my father wants to get the vaccine.
Oh,
And I do anticipate that it's going to be mandatory at some point. And I don't know how they can make it mandatory. What are they going to do? Like knock on my door and knock me out and vax me? So,
yeah.
I mean, I'd like to see them try.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, can we go back to, can we talk about the Trump impeachment for a moment?
Sure. Which one?
So
the latest one.
Probably. The latest one.
Yeah.
Yes. So this is along the lines of what you were talking about. So I didn't hear the whole thing about like it's going to be wild or whatever, but I did listen to Trump's speech, and I did see the tweet that he tweeted right before his Twitter account was suspended, where he said, you know, everything needs to be peaceful. I did not think that there was anything wrong with anything that he said in the video or in that tweet. And I think that it is extremely unfortunate for all of us as American citizens that he could be impeached. You know, impeachment is supposed to be for high crimes and misdemeanors.
Correct.
And my husband last night, he said, well, you know, high crimes don't have to be crimes. You know, if you look at the Federalist Papers, I'm like, honey, but they're called high crimes.
Yes, crimes.
So high crimes have to be crimes in order to be high crimes. Like, I don't need to read the Federalist Papers to come to that conclusion. So high crimes and misdemeanors. Misdemeanors are also crimes.
Yes.
So you shouldn't be able to impeach a president for something that is not a crime.
Correct.
And by definition, under the First Amendment, there are 5 areas. There are only 5 areas of unprotected speech. And the one at issue that everyone is all up in arms about is incitement. And they need to know that the standard is incitement of imminent lawless action.
Yeah.
It's not just incitement of whatever, incitement of violence, incitement of name calling, you know. So under the free speech standard, we cannot criminalize speech. And by impeaching our president, we essentially criminalized speech.
Yeah.
And Alan Dershowitz wrote an article on this. Now, think what you want about Alan Dershowitz. You know, he represented Epstein, whatever. Guess what? He's a defense attorney.
Yeah.
Sometimes defense attorneys represent bad people.
Yeah. Brilliant legal
but he-
mind. Yeah. No matter what,
but-
how you look at him, brilliant legal mind. Harvard's graduated, you know, it's Harvard professor, I should say. I don't know where he graduated college, but brilliant guy. So anyway, go on.
So yeah, I absolutely agree with him. And he even cited the Brandenburg v. Ohio case, which was a Supreme Court case from, I don't know when, but it was a KKK speech case. And I think that the KKK members were saying something like, bring back rights for white people or something, but they had this big rally and they invited the press, and basically they were allowed to say things like that because it did not fall under that standard of unprotected speech,
right?
Incitement of imminent lawless action. Now, you don't have to love the KKK. You don't have to love Donald Trump.
Right.
I personally don't like either of them. But that's not the point. The point is that whatever you prohibit your opponents from doing, you're not going to be allowed to do. Right. Whatever you take, whatever rights you take from your opponents will inevitably be taken from you.
Sure.
You know, and then we have this whole, okay, so can I shift to something else?
Yeah, sure.
Is that okay?
Yeah, go for it.
So then we have this whole Assange thing where the British court said, you know, no, Assange cannot be extradited.
Yeah.
And then the United States government appealed. So the British court says, no, he can't be extradited because there are medical risks. So you can't send him to the United States. Yeah. So why wouldn't they just release him? They just said, you know, there's medical risks. Like he would be at risk there. He's already at risk here, whether it's mental, emotional, whatever. And then the United States appealed. Yeah. Which for some reason they decide that that the appeal somehow is going to make a difference. How do you appeal that when they say, you know, to hold him, to continue incarcerating him is dangerous, and you know, we are ruling against it. So the US appeals, and then they have a bail hearing. And very often what happens during a bail hearing is the prosecution gets to speak and give all the reasons why the defendant should not be granted bail. And then the defense attorney gets to speak and give all the reasons why, you know, their client should be granted bail. Right. And, you know, things like, you know, like if they do think that if the court does think that the person is going to flee, you know, obviously that's not, they're not going to be granted bail. Yeah. Now my issue is that sometimes prosecutors lie. It happens, right?
Yeah, you know that.
Sometimes cops and prosecutors lie. Sometimes they provide disinformation to the judge. So they told the judge, you know, Assange absconded when he was facing rape charges way back when. Yeah. And so then the court gave that as one of the reasons for not granting bail. However, that does not make it true. Yes. Because if you look, I mean, who are we going to believe? Are we going to believe the US government's prosecutors? Or are we going to believe Nils Melzer, who covered this back in like March or April.
Mm-hmm.
And he talked about these rape charges where basically Julian Assange had been accused of rape for 9 years. The Swedish government never once wanted a statement from him. They weren't actually planning to file any charges because when the two alleged victims went into the police station, there were these two girls who Assange had slept with two women within the same week.
Yeah.
You know, God forbid. I'm sorry. You know, it's not a nice thing to do. So I'm sure the women were a little miffed.
Oh,
so they're like, okay, so, oh my gosh, he slept with you and then he slept with me. Oh my gosh, what if he has HIV? Let's go to the police station and force him to get an HIV test.
Yeah.
So they go to the police station, not the one that's closest to them, but the one that one of the girls knows a woman police officer at the police station where they went to.
Yeah.
And their purpose of going there was to force Assange to get an HIV test. And then the police start talking about rape. And so the one girl just kind of took the other girl there and didn't say anything. She was just there like for moral support for the other girl. Yeah. And so when the police started talking about rape, she was like, no, there was no rape. I'm not alleging rape. I'm leaving.
Right.
So then the other girl who hadn't said a single word, the very next day, the press got a hold of it and said that that girl had alleged rape and she hadn't even said anything.
Yeah. Wow.
So then at some point she did give a statement. We don't know what it says because it was changed by the prosecutor or by someone. Her statement was changed and it wasn't signed by her, which is really important because if you have a statement without a signature on it, then it's not authenticated.
Right.
So so the new statement, which we don't even know if that girl made the statement at all, said something about like the condom broke. He intentionally broke the condom. But then she said that she could not remember when the condom broke. So how does one intentionally, how can you claim that a person intentionally broke a condom if one does not remember when, in fact, it was broken? Makes no sense. And then there was another allegation that like Assange started having sex, like they'd been having sex over and over, right? And then the next morning she wakes up to Assange having sex with her. And she says, are you wearing a condom? And he says, no. And she says, you better not have HIV. And then they have sex. And so that's, and I don't know if that's true because again, that's like another statement that doesn't have a signature on it. So it's not authenticated, but that was the story. And then when Sweden tried to drop the charges, it was, I think, the British government that said, you better not be getting cold feet about this rape case.
Oh, yeah.
So there's a lot of stuff. Oh, and the most important thing, this is the most important thing.
Yep.
That when Assange, he never failed to show up for court.
Right.
He never did. The only thing that he said was, I'll give a statement over the computer, whatever you need me to do.
Yeah.
If I show up in Sweden, I want you to promise me that you will not extradite me to the United States.
Right.
And they couldn't make that promise. And he said, well, I'll give a statement, over video or whatever. But, the charges had not been filed. So how do you even have an arrest warrant without filing charges first?
Yeah. I don't know.
So there's just a lot that's involved, and, people believe the shit that they're told,
Yeah.
and people, we have to remember, everybody has to remember that the court's decision to deny bail is often based on information that comes from prosecutors. And sometimes prosecutors lie.
Right.
And I don't know anyone more credible than Nils Melzer.
Yeah.
So if we're going to believe, if we're going to say like, oh, I've heard both sides of that story.
Yeah.
Well, who's more credible than Nils Melzer?
Right. Well, it sounds like you've really done your homework with this. A lot of details that maybe people don't want to hear with regards to what happened with Assange and these women and so forth. To me, that's not even really an issue for me. I mean, I don't know what the statute of limitations is in Sweden. I don't know if they have one, but at a certain point, if you were going to prosecute somebody, you prosecute them. If they're guilty of a crime, then go ahead. Start the process. But the fact that they didn't, and the fact that this is some kind of reason as to why we can't have a publisher go out and publish information, because that's what, again, essentially Assange is a journalist. I was, told one time I was doing my other channel, and somebody, I just think it's kind of silly because I just write things down or observe things, whatever. And then I speak what I'm writing and observing. People go, well, you're a journalist. I go, that's kind of a big word. I don't really feel like a journalist. And somebody said, well, what a journalist does is watches something and writes it down and tells you what happened. Right. That's what a journalist is. So Julian Assange, it's a shame that apparently Trump was blackmailed, it sounds like, because I think Trump had all these tendencies, and you had these people advising him, oh, no, Mr. President, you can't do that. And every so often he would slip and he would do something, and people would be like, yeah, keep doing that. But then, well, you've got to placate, the deep state or the establishment. You really need to hire this guy, Bolton. He's an expert. And I'm sure Trump wasn't the guy that hired Bolton. And I'm sure all these, even Mike Pence. Oh my gosh. I mean, we could go off on Mike Pence. It's like, no, I'm not gonna send these electors back to the States. Sorry. And you had Trump and his legal team are like, what? But you can do this. It's in the even I think Dershowitz said that was a route that you could take. And Pence said no. Pence, by the way, is going to be at the inauguration today. Isn't that interesting? So we're finding this swamp was all around Trump. Trump was kind of partly in the swamp, and sometimes he participated in the swamp. There's no question about it. I'm not saying he didn't do stuff that I just said, why? Why are you rushing the vaccine? Well, here's why he rushed the vaccine, because everybody was like, when are you going to give us a vaccine? So Trump played their game. Trump didn't take any vaccine. Trump took Regeneron and that other stuff, that antibody synthetic cocktail, and he was up and about in 4 or 5 days. He told everybody about that thing you're not supposed to talk about that begins with an H. Okay, and we get doctors down here in Florida that are using that and ivermectin, which is the veterinarian stuff, and it seems to work really good if you take it as a prophylactic, to talk about what you were talking about with Julian Assange in a different way. So there's so much to unpack as far as what has happened to us, because it's us. We're the ones taking the beating. It's the people. It's not
It's
the elites.
our constitutional rights that are
Correct.
being watered down
Or
and
eliminated. I mean, free speech, First Amendment first, not 10th, although we could talk about what we really need to talk about the 10th Amendment moving forward with what might be happening. And I like my governor. My governor has opened the state. My governor has said that big tech is out of control. My governor wants to crack down on that and has said that he's going to figure out a way to do it. I don't know how he's going to do it, but we're Americans. We do workarounds. You know, if you don't like Twitter, okay, there was Parler and they got rid of Parler, which is crazy. Parler might come back. There's also Gab that's out there. We find ways around these issues. We work to fix and solve problems, but we do it. The government typically doesn't do it. And this is why I think libertarianism is a good philosophy. But tell me about what's going on. It's a good segue, because you were telling me what's going on in the Libertarian Party these days, because I have a few pet peeves that I think libertarians are, they're lefties and they're anarchists and so forth. I'm a peacemonger. Okay. I don't want anarchy. We've seen 2020 had enough anarchy for me to last a whole lifetime. So I would prefer peace, tranquility, you know, the serenity prayer.
right.
I want, so tell me, you're kind of an insider, you told me. So tell me what's going on with the libertarians.
Well, so there is kind of an internal battle going on within the Libertarian Party. And, you know, well, for one thing, I mean, I don't know how much of it I want to say, but I will say this. I feel that the way Joe Jorgensen's campaign was run, it was very, you know, they were trying to schmooze the left.
Yep.
To get, exactly. You know, to get Democrats to come in. And I think it didn't work. I think that kind of pandering didn't work. And to be honest with you, the thing that really upset me immediately after Joe Jorgensen got the nomination, the very next morning, someone from her campaign tweeted out like, hey, what do you think about using the slogan #I'm with her? And any reference to Hillary Clinton, I was just like, are you serious? You know, first of all, Jacob Hornberger, who was the candidate that I supported, was in the lead. Mm-hmm. He won like almost all of the polls, of the state polls, and she won. And those polls, like, they actually have people watch the debate for that, you know, people in that state watch the debate, and then they, you know, go online and they vote for who they like. Right. So it's not just like polls where they call random people on the phone. Mm-hmm. They're polls that are a lot more, I don't know what the word is. You can, I don't know, help me here. What's that word?
Polls that are what, more random, more precise? What do you mean? Less
random. They're not random. They are, I don't know, believable, credible.
Okay, credible is a good word.
So I don't understand how she got the nomination. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't hate the woman. You know, I like her. I think she's fine.
Another scandal, basically, that we didn't, because we were too busy. Please nominate an alternative so we can vote for that alternative, right?
Right. But the problem was like that her campaign staff, starting on day one, I remember waking up the next morning after she had secured the Libertarian nomination, and somebody was saying, what about using #I'm with her? And I was like, are you joking? And I like wrote all this stuff about how that was a horrible idea and that any association with Hillary Clinton would be immediately, you know, it would put a lot of people off because we don't like Hillary Clinton. You know, a lot of us want an alternative to that.
Yeah, of course.
So there was that. And recently there has been, you know, there have been people in the Libertarian Party who have not supported Assange.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a problem with Thomas Massie when Thomas Massie decided that he was going to vote against impeachment.
Yeah, smart move by him.
And I actually had a conversation with Thomas Massie that day, the day of the impeachment.
Right.
I'm not sure if it was really Thomas Massie. I think it might have been someone from his staff. But I'm really proud of the decision that Thomas Massie made. Because, like I said earlier, you can't criminalize speech. Correct. And what Trump said, you know, when I do the constitutional analysis, the speech, Trump's speech falls under protected speech. It doesn't fall under any of those 5 exceptions. Right. So to criminalize speech, it hurts us.
Yes.
It's setting a precedent that will hurt us.
Correct.
It's, you know, like, it's not really going to hurt him. He's rich. He'll go home to West Palm Beach. He'll move to Australia. You know, maybe he's rich. Like, what's really going to affect him?
Correct.
So there are some problems within the Libertarian Party because there are some people who, you know, libertarians first and foremost are supposed to stand for our civil liberties.
Correct.
We libertarians want less government, not more government.
That's
and a lot of people take issue with some of the libertarian policies. Mm-hmm. And I am on board with the libertarian policies. I'm now a dues-paying member of the Mises Caucus.
Yeah, you'll have to send
a lot of people.
Send me a link to that later.
Okay, I will. But I want to explain something to you and to everyone else about libertarians. There's this crazy misconception that we don't care about poor people and that we are just, you know, all for ourselves.
Correct.
So let me explain something. I do not think that my federal government represents me. Mm-hmm. When I pay taxes that the US government then uses to drop bombs on other countries and kill innocent children.
Yeah.
And that's what the government is doing with my tax dollars.
Right.
I don't trust them to be handling my tax dollars. So I don't believe that the federal government should be doing government health care, education, etc. Anything. I think that the federal government's power needs to be taken away and allocated to the states.
Thank you.
Now, I am not saying that the states should not provide healthcare, education, UBI if they decide to do it. You know, all of these things are important.
Right.
I just do not trust my federal government to do that.
Yeah.
Why can't the states do it?
Right.
So I thought about the whole anarchy thing, because there are a lot of libertarians who call themselves anarchists. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that Mises, I don't think that that's the Mises standpoint.
Yeah.
You know, that we're anarchists. But it depends on how you define anarchy, you know, because I'm not an anarchist who refuses to answer to anybody. Mm-hmm. I'm just someone who's saying my federal government does not represent me, and I do not want them to be in charge of as much as they are. I want decentralization of government power.
Yeah. And I agree with everything you said there. And one thing that I did when I was not maybe 20 years ago, 15 years ago, I read Atlas Shrugged, which takes
Mm-hmm.
probably a good chunk of your year because it's one of the longest books you'll ever read. And the theme in the book is primarily individualism. And I understand individualism, but I don't understand it in the context of my religious faith, which again, a lot of libertarians tend to be less religious. They tend to embrace atheism because they say things like, well, that crazy sky god thing, and how can you even imagine something like that? That's just stupidity, intellectual laziness, and so forth. It's a crutch. That's another one I hear a lot. And it's always going to be there. And those are things that give people hope. And you can call it hopium. That's my new word that I learned in 2021. That's what the Q people do. They provide people with hopium. But for some of us, we understand that those foundations helped build the country. That was actual liberty. You had liberty, religious liberty. You had free speech. You had all of these different things. You leaned on something that even if you're not sure of how it all turns out at the end, of course, there are, you can read the Bible and get to the end and find out how it's going to turn out. And you don't have to believe that. I am all for you not believing. But I do believe that there are things that happened in this country that I believe there's some divine intervention that happened, especially at the beginning of our country. I think there's less and less as people kind of drift away from those religious underpinnings. They're also kind of letting the country drift away from its origins. Because anybody who says to me, oh, well, it wasn't really founded by religious people, they're all a bunch of crazy deists and they had some good ideas and, then they own slaves. So that's kind of just, erases anything that they could have done that was good. I come from the perspective that a true libertarian look at Dr. Ron Paul. Okay. There's somebody who can kind of look toward, who I think is a great example of liberty. He is not a big fan of destroying fetuses in the womb, trying to use language here that is, okay, but it still might not be okay. And he lays out, you can read his book. It's called Liberty Defined. I would recommend it if you want to find out what true liberty is. Okay. Because I've never read a stronger argument for that type of libertarianism. By the way, that libertarianism is okay with a hint of nationalism. Okay. Not the kind of nationalism that you're hearing about in, on Twitter, or, okay, are you a white supremacist? It's like, no. Like you live in Ohio. I mean, people in Ohio have pride for their state. They love the state of Ohio. People in Florida, where I live, they like their state. Does that mean I'm a statist because I like Florida? No, it's a different version of statism, but you know what I'm saying? It's the same kind of philosophy. Is that, what if I like the American flag? What if I liked the country? What if I liked, some of its history and its foundings and so forth? And I didn't just throw it all in the trash because there are some things that we did wrong at the beginning, which we all have acknowledged and repented for over and over again. So I'd love to see the Libertarian Party do a bit of a pivot. And I would say it has to pivot a little bit to the right and not to the left. You pivoting to the left is feeding into this whole, I don't know. We had, like I said at the beginning of this, I think we had enough anarchy. I think last year people saw what happened in Seattle and Portland and Milwaukee and Kenosha and New York City and various places all around the country. And who knows, maybe Washington, D.C. Wasn't necessarily January 6th. I didn't look at that as anarchy. I looked at a few bad actors who then created, you know how it is when you're in a crowd and you see other people doing something. I think there were a lot of innocent bystanders there that said, okay, let's walk. They walked the rope line. I don't know if you saw that they were walking the rope line. I don't think those are anarchists or bad actors if they're staying within the lines at the Capitol. Like, okay, let's go on the Capitol tour. This is cool, because there are a lot of people that go there. They have to kind of schedule the appointment or whatever they have to do to get in there. So, you know, it is
And the
technically
pol-
our house. People talk about how it's
police were
sacred.
the police were ushering them in.
Yeah, yeah, I saw
Police
that.
opened the gates,
Those
let
bike
them
rack,
in,
those
and then
bike rack things, they were like outside. They just moved them. And then they were like,
mhm,
come on, follow me. It's like the guided tour. I saw that footage and I said, this does not look like an insurrection. An insurrection is
right.
when, you know, people are dropping bombs and there is no heavy artillery as far as I can tell. I don't even know if any shots came from our side to their side. I think, again, you talked about Ashley Babbitt, right? That was her name. I
Mhm,
mean, she's the one who got shot by a bullet and she died. So
right. But I don't know who the other 4 people were who died.
I know, and they're very hush hush about all that. I heard there were like strokes and things that happened
Yeah,
after the fact,
like
like it was
natural deaths.
somewhat related to the incident, but wasn't the incident. So
Right.
again, this is, you know, in addition to the free speech and the elections, we need to have, and it's related to both of those things, we have to have a media that actually does reporting instead of propaganda. And it's propaganda. I heard Katie Couric the other day telling people that, you know, we need to be deprogrammed because we're too, and she was referring to
Right.
Trumpers.
Right. We should be put into re-education camps, just
Yeah.
like they do in China.
Yeah, China, specific, and China,
Mm.
and well, you know, you can't make that little connection because, you know, we were told for 4 years it was Russia. Now we understand it's China. See, no,
Right.
because Russia sends me great stuff, and China hasn't sent me anything except for stuff that breaks when you open it at the Dollar Tree. You know, so
Right. Yeah.
I'm
So
pretty much out of topics here. Is there any other? I mean, because we've already been on here for
Yes.
like a while.
Yes. I just want to quickly
Go ahead.
address what you said about the libertarians and the religion and religious liberty.
Okay, yeah, go into that because a lot of Christian people don't think they can, even though they like a lot of the libertarian stuff, they think that the libertarians don't like them. They don't like God. They don't like faith, and they.
Okay.
Okay, so go ahead.
So yeah, let me talk about that. I am a Christian.
Yes.
I am a libertarian. I am a member of
Oh,
Mises.
you
I
gotta
am a
send me a link.
Mises Caucus member.
All right.
Jacob Hornberger is also a Christian. Justin Amash is also a Christian.
Okay.
Justin Amash is pro-life.
Oh,
Not every libertarian is pro-life,
right.
but some libertarians are pro-life and some libertarians are the opposite.
Yeah.
So I definitely lean more towards being pro-life.
Right. Right.
You know, except there have been, you know, things that I've helped out with where, you know, I was a guardian ad litem for a little while, and I was appointed in a criminal case to be a guardian ad litem for a kid, like a 15-year-old kid who gave birth to a child, and it was, you know, she had been sexually abused.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there are things like that that make me believe that there should be some exceptions, but I really, really lean more towards being pro-life.
Right.
You know, anyone who is trying to push Christians away from the Libertarian Party
Mhm.
is probably one of those panderers, one of those
Left. Yeah.
one of those people who are pandering to the left, who, you know, in Mises Caucus, we don't pander to the left.
Good. Good.
I am supporting a candidate, Angela McArdle,
Mm-hmm.
who I think is absolutely amazing. She's running for chair of the LP in 2022.
Nice.
And that's who I'm supporting. And she said, you know, what we need to do is we need to focus on our principles.
Yeah.
And we need to stop doing what's popular because it's not working. And, you know, guess what? What's popular is not always what's right.
Right.
So, and, you know, if you look at like libertarianism, we are definitely fiscally conservative.
Yeah.
But there is a very good reason for that.
Yeah.
And that is that our federal government, who we are paying taxes to, you know, they're not representing us by killing people in other countries. That's, you know,
Correct.
they're just not. They're just not. So I think that's a really good reason to be fiscally conservative.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, the more the government helps us, the more it can control us. And we do not want the government to control us.
Thank you.
So give that power to the states.
Yes.
Let the states do it. The states don't have the authority to bomb other countries.
Right.
Right? The states can just spend our tax dollars on what's best for the people.
Yeah.
Now, another thing I want to talk about, libertarianism, like pure libertarianism, we believe in the non-aggression principle.
Yes, thank you.
So it's not, okay, this is going to get deep just a little bit for just a second. First, I would like to say that the reason why we need separation of church and state is because we won't have freedom of religion without it.
True.
Separation of church and state is the vehicle by which freedom of religion is attained. Because if we don't have that, if we prop up one religion, it will be very, very easy for another brand of extremist, whatever, any kind of extremism to come in and topple whatever it is that we have propped up.
Yeah.
That's why we have separation of church and state. So I didn't understand that until I studied constitutional law. I really didn't. I was, you know, I was a Christian. I am still a Christian. I was like, you know, Christians should be able to pray in school. They should be able to, you know, do whatever they want to do. But what we have to keep in mind that we need to prevent government entanglement with any religion, because if government and religion are working together, then that sets a very dangerous precedent for another religion to come in and take over government. We don't want that.
True.
And libertarians, you know, we believe in the non-aggression principle. Now, a lot of these QAnons and, you know, I think that the QAnons are kind of like, I don't know a lot about the QAnons, but I did watch that series of 10 videos back when it was like brand new.
Yeah.
And it seemed like it's just very apocalyptic. It's very like, you know, this is what's going to happen. And they're basically saying that what's going to happen is like, you know, what Revelations says happen. So like, this is the end. And, you know, how long have people been saying like, oh, it's the end, it's the end.
Yeah.
So why get everyone scared about it?
Because you keep watching. You keep, and it's like I said, it's hopium. Well, in that case, it's not hopium, it's doomium. I don't know, but
right. And I, you know, my mother follows QAnon.
Yeah.
And, you know, like me, like I don't really follow, you know, like I said, I watched that series of 10 videos and I have friends who send me information about the Q drops sometimes. And most of the time I don't understand them at all. But I said to my mother, I said, you know, she's like, trust the plan. And I said, mother, you do not trust the plan.
Right.
You do not trust in Trump.
No.
You trust in God.
God. There you go.
You trust in God.
There you go.
That's it. That's who you trust in.
That's
nobody else. Nothing else.
You're preaching it, sister.
So, so yeah, and libertarianism is the non-aggression principle. We don't believe that we should be going to war and these wars are just, they're not necessary.
Right. Right.
If we're not being directly attacked, we should not be going to war. And I think it was General Wesley Clark,
yeah,
who said that after 9/11, somebody told him that, we were going to war in Iraq. And he was like, we're going to war in Iraq? Why?
Right. Right.
And the person said, well, we don't really know what to do about the terrorists, but we're really good at taking down governments. So George W. Bush has a plan to take out 7 countries in the next 5 years. That is not Christian. That is not what Christians do.
Correct.
That's not any kind of Christianity.
No, it's not.
And that's why I like libertarianism, is because we believe in the non-aggression principle. We do not want war. Right. We are anti-war.
Yeah.
And we, say, I don't like it when these Christian pastors say, this is all just prophecy being fulfilled. Well, just stop with that narrative. Like, we can't control what happens and when it's going to happen. And when politicians make things happen that have been prophesized, then it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, because they're the ones who are making it happen.
Yeah, that's true.
So we should not be interfering in that.
Well,
we can't control
no.
when Jesus comes, and we can't control that. We should not be trying to control that. That is sick. That's sick.
I know you're making an interesting point, and this is going to get all into theological weeds, and we only have I was going to cut things off here in about 6 minutes, but let me try to, because you said a lot there, so I'm going to try to wrap things up and then kind of get us done without being too we'll have to do a part 2, because it's just too much good stuff here. Because now that we've gone into religion, we could do a video about COVID. We could do a religion video.
Well, my point was, libertarians are completely welcome.
Right.
Christians are absolutely welcome in the Libertarian Party. Muslims are welcome. Hindus are welcome. Buddhists are welcome.
Yeah.
It's the non-aggression principle.
Yeah.
We don't want to fight with anyone.
Oh, yeah. And Jesus was known as the Prince of Peace. He wasn't known as the Prince of War. Tulsi Gabbard used to say that all the time. Prince of Peace. Hey. I don't get, all right, rather than me going to, I won't do the theology thing, but I do understand, let me say this. I do understand why there are a lot of Christians right now who study that prophecy end of things and really read Revelation for what it is and take it very literally. They're seeing things around them right now, like plagues and just, it seems, and when you talk about one world government, used to say that like years ago, and people would go, you're a crazy person. You're wearing a tinfoil hat. You're nuts. Not so
I could talk about that for a long time. Not
so far-fetched anymore, the whole one world government. The vaccination, okay? If you're going to get an mRNA vaccine inside of your blood and they're going to shoot it into you, that is going to mess with your DNA. No matter how many ways you try to convince me it's not, I've already read like 6 books about this, and it's programming your DNA to make proteins to supposedly do what they're supposed to do in order to fight the coronavirus. All right. That's never been done to human beings in the history of the world. So there are a lot of people that are saying, that are very conspiratorial, very tinfoil hattish, and very into the book of Revelation. Well, that sounds like a mark. Sounds like a digital mark. Is it far-fetched? Do I look at them and go, I don't say you're crazy. I say, I'm worried. That's what I say. I'm definitely worried, because when you got Bill Gates and you got all of these people out there who are definitely into culling, they're definitely into, And you can go back to the Rockefellers, you can go back to the beginning of the last century and see the progression of, hey, this population is looking a little bit too robust, a little bit too big, and here we are, 100 plus years later. And now all of these oligarchs are running around going like this. Yeah, never let a good crisis go to waste. What? A vaccine? Mm-hmm. Gee, wonder what we can put in that vaccine. And then, okay, to get back to the whole religious connotation, there are more people now that are looking up and they're going, okay, God, anytime, because there are poor people, there are marginalized people, there are people now that don't have a voice because of the free speech stuff we talked about. There are more people that voted in the election and had their vote canceled, just like everything else in cancel culture. Your vote just got canceled. Okay, great. And I'm supposed to sit here today on Inauguration Day and be like, unity, yay. Sorry, I loved your stuff on the Libertarian Party, okay? And that gives me hope. I'm not a registered Libertarian. I might become one, but I've got to be assured that it's a serious movement, and you put somebody at the top that says, you know what? You got to be atheist. You got to be anarchist. You got to be like, just into some of the principles. I mean, I took that libertarian quiz when it was on their website, like, I don't know how many years ago. And I landed almost in the middle. I mean, kind of a little libertarian right, I think is where I was, but I wasn't drastically right. I just believe that when you say life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, there is life there, and it's kind of hard to ignore that one. If you're not allowing for life, then you're kind of like, how is that? You can't have liberty if you don't have life. Right. I hate to be a mathematician here like Andrew Yang, but it's math. You don't have life. It's one mind anyway. I'm just going off.
Yeah. No, it's logic. No, yeah. You're right.
So
you don't have to be an atheist.
No.
Atheists are welcome.
Right. And I welcome talking to atheists. This notion that it's almost like, I hate to talk to atheists this way, but it's almost like them saying, like, I don't wear my Christianity on a sleeve or anything like that. I don't have a sign that goes off that says Christian. All right. What's interesting is people who are atheists tend to be a lot like people who are of a different sexual persuasion. Like, they've just got to blare it out there. And you're like, hey, I liked you before you told me all this stuff. I don't know why it's pertinent. It's almost as if they want to dig in my head and find out, why are you so crazy and you worship that crazy sky god thing? Why can't you just like not do that? Because then you would be so much more believable and logical, and you could have a real discussion. But since you're so committed to that thing that you do, I don't know, the founders were. There were a lot of people that, don't tell me the founders weren't. Don't tell me that great men in history, women, men, whoever. Harriet Tubman was a devout Christian. Okay, devout Christian. And
I didn't know that. That's
and
cool.
all the things that you think about Martin Luther King. We just celebrated Martin Luther King Day. You want to talk about the non-aggression principle? Do no harm. Martin Luther King, actual, real, peaceful protesting. Okay. Right. He paid with his life. Okay. That was an example of Jesus Christ in our age, since, within our modern era, that somebody was killed for their faith, for their following the way of Jesus and not following the way of, anarchy. So
yeah. Can I say something real quick? That's
sure.
Kind of like, you just made me think of this.
Yeah.
Trump, when he decided not to pardon Julian Assange in order to save himself,
I know it was bad.
I think that was cowardly, and I don't want to push QAnons away.
Right.
I mean, some people who follow QAnon are really reasonable people, and they realize that not all Q drops are true. Right.
Right.
And I don't want to push those people away, but I do want to say that, like you said, Martin Luther King paid with his life. He was a hero.
Yep.
Donald Trump could have been the hero. And I don't know what would have happened to him. He probably would have been persecuted and maybe killed.
Well, he
But
loses. I mean, I don't think he's going to run for president again. I know everybody says, you know, he could still run for president. I don't think he's going to do that. I mean, he'll
well,
be
I'm not. I mean, I won't vote for him. He
no
didn't pardon Julian Assange. Like,
right.
I
Well,
am
I won't.
angry.
Right. I won't vote for him because it's over with. It's done. We've tried that. You know, he could have been a little bit more courageous, like you said. The thing with Trump at this point is the MAGA brand is for real though. Trump leaves, but the MAGA brand is real and it's still out there. And there are patriots within that brand, as I like to call them, who are concerned about things like you talk about, like small government. It's somebody needs to come along and get us together and say it's the ruling class against the underclass. And until someone is able to marshal and not like, what's the word? Defile people that don't agree, like on religion or on certain things, until that person can come along and unite people, we're going to have this duopoly that continues to just run right over people. And you're going to get bannings. And we also have to create an infrastructure with the voting. We have to fix the voting system with free speech. We have to find platforms where we're able to speak. And by the way, that means if you want to get that crazy libertarian argument about, hey, it's a private company. Okay, fine. I'm leaving your private company. I'm going to go over to this other private company that offers me the service that I want. And
oh goodness, I wanted to talk about that. Can we talk about that next time?
Yes, we will talk about it next time.
That is a really big, really big thing.
But no, but we're going to be lucky if we could have somebody watch this entire video. So we've got to stop.
Okay. Yeah.
But you and I are good. This is a good team. Thanks for coming on again today, because what you do is you provoke a lot of interesting things, and I appreciate your perspective.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me on.